principles are, if that's okay. Not that I actually know, I can give it a shot. So, no, that's fine for now. So, okay, this is a definition. And then we'll start off with definitions, and then we're hoping to kind of go into more of the experience of the definition. So bear with us. When we talk about the three principles, we're talking about a pre-existing, all-present truth or fact or power or force. Please, I'm going to use lots of different words because the language can get in the way of seeing what we're talking about. And when I say pre-existing, it's not based in good ideas or concepts or beliefs. Because studying psychology, a lot of the hypotheses change, a lot of the theories can change, a lot of the theories can be, this is how it works, and it gets disproven. So this isn't in the realm of what we think. It's in the realm of what allows us to think. Okay, so you're going beyond concepts, ideas, and beliefs to something that is always true and has always been true before the human race even existed. It's not sometimes true, it's true all the time. Like before humanity, gravity was still here. That's kind of like a physical truth or fact or power. Like gravity for the physical world, this is kind of like the gravity for the psychological, emotional, spiritual world. It points to something fundamental, something human, the power that allows us to experience our experience. So the first insight I had, thanks to my dear wife, was I was very into Buddhism. I used to meditate regularly. And I kept saying to Jenny, this is just like Buddhism, this is just like Buddhism. And I remember we were in London, we were going for a run, and Jenny was going, no, it's the outcome can be similar, but this is not about Buddhism, it's not like Buddhism. And so I got angry and ran off. Well, fine, let's agree to disagree. I ran off. And then something struck me that, like the Buddha had to use the power of thought, the power of mind, the power of consciousness to come up with anything, you know? It's beneath, it's the undercurrent. So when we're talking about something principle-based, we're talking about something fundamentally true, not based on good ideas. For example, a good idea would be, don't talk to somebody if you're not feeling very good or you're angry. Most of the time, 100% don't go there, because if you're not feeling so good, talking to them isn't going to end up quite, very well for you. But sometimes it can. Sometimes we've chatted when we haven't been feeling so good, and it's actually worked out really well. So that's like a good idea, but it's not true 100% of the time. It's true maybe 95% of the time. So this is going beyond good ideas to what allows us to create good ideas. It's always deeper, it's always deeper, it's always deeper. So when we talk about mind, thought, and consciousness, this is just my way of talking about it, and it may not sit well with you, but there isn't really three principles, there's just one. If you take mind, thought, and consciousness, another way of saying that is there is one conscious thinking mind. Consciousness, thought, mind. There's one power making it all happen. And mind, thought, and consciousness are just different states of the same thing. Does that kind of make sense so far? So please don't get caught up in 3 and how do they interact, and is mind better than thought, and how does consciousness work with mind, and because that can get really confusing. Just see it that there's one universal or divine animating force or power behind all of it, and that's what we're talking about. Anything to add in the definitions?
I don't know. What do you say? I think I like how Sid spoke about it, because he spoke about the oneness and he'd say it was all one. I think he kind of knew that we sort of needed it to be broken up for us. He'd seen this so clearly and he thought the world would change in 6 weeks. I think he started to see quite quickly that we weren't getting it. He'd seen something so beyond the human experience. So he's kind of, I love how he spoke about thought as a principle and consciousness as a principle. It's almost like it gives us something to get our head around. But then suddenly he'll be all back in the oneness again. So I love that dance he seemed to play between it's all one and then realizing we're human beings, and it's actually sometimes really helpful to have things broken down for us. And I think for me now, I'm probably a bit more like Rudi, I do see them as interchangeable. I can use any one of those words for any one of the definitions that I used to have for them. And that if I say thought in the moment, that's mind in the moment, that's consciousness in the moment, because they cannot be separated. But I know for myself, seeing where my feelings were coming from moment to moment, that it's these principles. It's thought in the moment generating experience. That's what, there's one place to look. There's one truth. And I didn't know how much beauty and openness and truth would be found looking there. It amazes me because it seems so simple, and I would have said that I'd kind of checked that off my list 10 years ago when I came across this. Okay, thought creates feeling, brilliant. Got that, what else? But to keep revisiting that insight, to keep being reminded again and again and again that there's no experience without these principles. There's no experience for any of us without thought being included, or mind being included, consciousness being included. It opens us up to the unknown, or the spiritual, or the power. Because I know I can't get my human brain around this. Like, we don't have to. You don't have to try and work this out and get it. I came away from my first 3-day training. I couldn't remember the 3 principles, but I had changed beyond recognition in so many ways. My friend at the time was studying psychology, and she kept saying, but what's happened? What are these principles and what do they mean? And I could remember mind and thought, and I'd forgotten consciousness. And it irritated her because she was like, no, but I'm studying psychology and I know about the brain and I know about this. How comes you've changed overnight? And I had no answer for her because I didn't know change was possible that fast. I thought you had to work at something and you had to know what your insights were to change, but you don't even have to remember your insights. Because as soon as they're insights, they're kind of in this world of form, and that's not even it. There's a change that happens within us, and it goes beyond words and beyond form. And it's that magic or that essence or those principles or those powers that just work through us. So it's almost, Dr. Roger Mills on the first course said, it's too late for you now. You've heard this, you've heard something, and you can't go back. Because once you know how something works, you can't unknow that. So it keeps reminding you. And I love how I can be so on board with the principles and then so completely lost in my thinking. I'm like, they do not work, it's not true. But you kind of know that it is true. So it's almost bear with it, be open to it. And it may not be in this conference, it may be tomorrow or next week or next year or 10 years. But there's something that gets woken up within us as we talk about this and learn about this, that I think it does show itself in nature or in your friends or in children or driving or washing up. Because this is within you. Like, we're not giving you anything. We're not telling you anything you don't already know. So it's just being aware that there's changes that will happen from within you, and they'll be perfect for you. And you don't have to try and get this or work this out. It's already present, it's already happening. It's how you've always lived. It's already up in operation from the moment we've been born. So it's kind of nice to know that we're not trying to tell you anything new, we're just pointing out what's already happening. And I know for myself, seeing what's already happening has just made life so much more fun. I laugh more. I laugh at myself. I was the child who used to hide under the table if people laughed at me when I was small. Or at school, I would go and hide in the toilets and cry because people had laughed at me. Even if I told a joke, I just couldn't bear being laughed at. I took myself so seriously. So to be able to laugh, but that's been my journey, it's been what I've seen, and it may be different for you. We're all going to be standing here sharing our insights and what we've seen and do our best to explain the unexplainable. But the beauty of it is that everyone will go away and have their own experience. Everyone's sat here having their own experience of whatever I'm saying, because they're not hearing what I'm saying. They're hearing what they're making up about what I'm saying. Because it's an inside job where it works one way. And the only experience we have is the thought-created experience going on within us. And it's incredible the ease, the peace. It's incredible that it allows you to feel grief and sorrow and anger in a completely new way. Because this understanding isn't about being happy all the time or being peaceful all the time. It's about understanding the human experience. And suddenly all feelings become allowed because it's that system working perfectly within us. So whatever we think, we feel. So we're not doing it wrong when we're having a bad day. And that was so helpful for me because I thought I'd been getting it wrong my whole life. I should be happy. I should be okay. I've got a lovely family. I've got a nice school. I've got all these privileges. I should be happy. I should be okay. So the guilt I then felt for not feeling that, it was such a relief to just say, oh, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong. These principles are still operating beautifully and perfectly within you. You just really don't like that feeling because you misunderstand what it means. So understanding what it means allows you to feel any of the feelings without so much on it. It doesn't mean anything about us as individuals. It doesn't mean anything about us. It's just experience happening. And something that happened to us recently when we were in Nepal is I think Dave will say the same, we all realised we're really not that important. But it wasn't a bad feeling. It wasn't like, we're not that important. We don't have to take ourselves so seriously. But this understanding even goes beyond the words, because there was so much understanding already present in Nepal. There was so much resilience and human spirit and love and gratitude already present within the people. And we learned more probably from them than they did from us, because these principles are pre-existing and they're operating whether we know the words of them or not. It went beyond the translations because we knew that what was being translated wasn't really what we were saying, because we'd say one sentence and then they'd talk for 5 minutes. But something went beyond the words and people heard something. So it's almost like you can ignore what we're saying. Like, it used to confuse me so much when Sid would say that, don't listen to my words. I'm like, well, what do I listen to? Well, I think what he realised is you're going to be listening to the words coming from within you. It's never going to be about his words. It's going to be what you've heard. And I'm starting to understand, I think, a bit more where he was trying to point, that it's within us. He wasn't trying to train people to teach like him, I don't think. I think he was waking us up to the teacher or the guide or the person within us that knows how to live us. And there's 7 billion or more people on the planet, and it's going to be different for all of us. But to know that the operating system is the same. It's the same within all of us. I think that's what really unites us, that it's within us. And we're all having a different experience, but it's created the same way. And it's beyond anything I think I know. I thought at some point I was going to think I knew these principles and I knew this understanding. But the longer I'm around this, the less I know. I come away feeling more and more like I don't know what this is about, because it's so much bigger than I'd imagined. Because at some point I did have the definitions and I could talk about them, and quite often we'd take it in turns to say what we thought mind, consciousness and thought were. And luckily for us, Mark and Sheila heard beyond our words and knew what we were pointing to. Because every time I look back and see how I had seen it, I'm like, no, that's not it. I remember somebody saying, Sid spent his whole life telling people what it wasn't. Because as soon as we think we know what it is, it's not that. Because it's almost that cannot be known. But I feel like we get to have an experience of it or a glimpse at it. And that tiny glimpse or experience changes everything for us.
I think when we first started teaching this, which is only about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, we used to talk about what they were. Now we are really talking about what they're not. Because this is what the principles are. It's a thin black line. You can all go home now. This is what it isn't. Sometimes it's actually hard to hear this because of all of that stuff in the way. But when you kind of use the logic and wisdom of the 3 principles to show what it isn't, you can cross them out and then you can see them clearer. So I wanted to talk a bit more about that, but again, for the newer people, I just wanted to use a metaphor. And I've actually stolen this from Jamie Smart. So this isn't mine. I would project it on the big screen, but then we'll have loads of light coming in our faces. So I'm just going to show this to you guys. So look at the FedEx sign. I'm just going to walk around and see if you can see an arrow in it. Can anyone see an arrow in the FedEx sign? So when Jamie put that on the big screen in Finland at conference we were at recently, I couldn't see an arrow anywhere in that. Is there anyone who can't see the arrow? Got it. Okay, that's maybe a third of you can't see the arrow. Okay. So I'm going to point to the arrow. You ready? Can you see the arrow now? So there's an arrow pointing that way, just there. Okay. Now, with principles, gravity is a principle, and gravity is really an obvious principle, because everyone knows this happens. Okay. Now, the 3 principles are principles, but they're more like the FedEx sign. They're not that observable. Does that make sense? So just because you can't really observe them like you can with a physical principle doesn't mean to say they're not there. It just means that they're more subtle. As I understood one simple truth, which we're going to talk about in a moment, a lot of not principles started falling off my mind. So, via subtraction, maybe these are still left. This is a generalisation. But what it was, which I can't actually talk about at all, but the experience or the sense of what it, not that it's it, this no thing is, was more in my experience, more as an experience in everyday life, like when you're washing up, when you're going for a walk, when you're overwhelmed, when you're doing anything. Because I'd eradicated a whole lot of what it wasn't. And the one simple truth, which sounds really psychological, but it isn't, is that our entire experience of life is coming from our thinking of our experience of life. Now you're probably thinking, well, I've heard that before. But I've only ever had one insight again and again and again over the last 11 or 12 years, and it's that one insight. Oh, it's thought. Oh, it's thought. Oh, it's thought. Oh, it's thought. One insight with an infinite depth. So to put it into a practical context, when we started dating, I didn't really know where my experience was coming from. So it looked like Jenny's behaviour was what was making me insecure or mad or irritable or angry. Because if she didn't behave like that, I wouldn't feel like this. It's logical, isn't it? Because it does look like that. If the car hadn't cut me up, if my boss wasn't such a, I'm not going to swear, an unnice person, if I wasn't in debt, if the world worked this way. So you're attributing your experience from something other than your thinking. That is the biggest misunderstanding since the dawn of humanity. The biggest misunderstanding that are causing all the wars, all the personal and global suffering, is people not knowing where their experience is coming from. Because if you think your experience is coming from something other than your own thinking, what do you need to do? You need to control out there. You need conditions on out there. You need people to behave or not behave in certain ways. You can't go here or you can't go there. All of a sudden, you've got a lot of conditions happening because you're trying to control or manage or avoid stuff out there. But when you see your experience of out there is coming from thought of out there, all of a sudden it comes within. And I know in our relationships, the more I saw where my own experience is being generated, it's weird. I mean, I know this sounds psychological, but in a sense, as I saw the truth of where my experience was being generated, it opened up this new possibility of love, this new possibility of forgiveness, of understanding. Because I wasn't blaming something that wasn't true. I was seeing the truth of my experience. And I remember once Jenny had went through a jealous phase at the start of the year. I had my own phases. I was enormously egotistical, even more so than I am now, which takes some doing. And so we all have our own little things that we do. And so when Jenny got jealous, it was Jenny's jealousy making me need to defend myself, making me reactive, making me, oh, here we go again. So it looked like Jenny was the cause of my experience. Because it's the greatest illusion in life. It does look like that. But the funny thing was, is as both of us started to wake up that one simple truth, well, hang on a minute, I cannot have an experience of Jenny without thinking of Jenny. It's like I phoned my sister in New Zealand and like I have to use a phone talk into the phone to get hold of my sister. I can't just shout to New Zealand. So this is like the middleman, the intermediary, the bridge. And the bridge between this formless, fluid potential of life and our experience of all of it is thought. The power of thought, not cognition, but the power that allows us to think. The energy behind life that allows us to think. That conscious thinking mind. So it's almost like when I correct my own misunderstanding, it's interesting because the next time, I remember Jenny getting jealous once, and she was really going for it. You can get your own back in a minute.
I know, I'm trying to think of some things.
I remember her kind of going for it, and all of a sudden, I thought, oh, Jenny's feeling her thinking. What's that got to do with me? And I remember she was going, la, 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 la. And I just said, I do apologise, you might need a bucket. But I just said, you know what, honey? You're beautiful when you're angry. And I meant it. Well, that pissed you off even more. But I found, like in a relationship, that not just like a romantic relationship, but it could be with your children, your boss, your brothers, your sisters, your work colleagues, that when you know where your experience is coming from, literally the only answer is love. Because you don't blame them for how you feel. Now, that didn't happen all the time. Sometimes I get defensive and I'll forget. But more and more now I'm seeing where my experience is coming from in the moment. And I do apologise for the word, but I can't think of a better word. But it's seeing God. It's seeing God in the moment. It's like we walk around in this infinite realm of possibility. And the experience of that is imbued in your everyday life, no matter what you're doing. And the great thing is even if I've got a busy mind or I'm feeling upset or angry, it's still there. It's like I don't care what my head does. I don't care what the experience of my head is giving me. Because it's not what your head is doing that's giving you your experience. It's what you make up. It's what you think about what your head is doing. For instance, last night, woke up at 3:30 in the morning, thought, I really need to sleep because I'm talking tomorrow. But then I just thought, I'll just lay here. And then I laid there and eventually I fell asleep. Now, there was the fact that I've woken up and it's night time, but my experience of that was coming from my thinking about what it meant to be waking up at 3 in the morning. I could have stressed or worried about it. You see, it's all thought. I've been waffling a lot. What do you want to say? You can get, Jenny's going to get her own back now.
It's interesting as you're talking because I just saw how it feels like the principles are the bridge, or thought is the bridge. But then when you fall into where the bridge leads, you realise there was never any bridge. And I think that's what I did a webinar the other day, and afterwards I was laying in bed thinking, I cannot remember what I was talking about. But it was something around that. I've started to see that the principles is, like, it seems like it's a bridge or a doorway to the unknown. As soon as you fall into the unknown, you realise there was never any bridge and it was never needed, because it's all that. It's all the same. And I was trying to think of some really good stories about you, and my mind went blank. I know there's so many. But one of the things that did occur to me was that the one thing that for a long time I used to think, if I could just see these principles, but around money and finance, I'd feel so much better. And about a month ago, we became debt-free for the first time in the 10 years we've been together. And Rudi really thought for such a long time that if you were debt-free, you'd be happier. And it was such a weird experience to just go, oh, I still feel exactly the same. But it's like debt used to be this big bad thing that made you feel bad. It was outside of your experience. It was nothing to do with your thinking. It was the debt. It was the bank balance. And it was so weird to, I suppose, just go, well, it's cool. Like, wow, we're kind of back to, we haven't got any savings, we haven't got any debt. And it was, but it didn't bring anything. There's nothing on it anymore. And I think there's so many areas I know I don't see thought included in my experience. It's like I don't even care anymore. Like I used to want to see it more. And we went to a training recently where we had to come up with and think of something that we'd like to see more about. So it took me a while. I hate being told off. I hate getting things wrong. I do not see thought included in that. It really is the person telling me off. And it was so funny because I was in the group with Dom and he just, afterwards you kind of have to listen to other people talk about your issue. And the way he said it was like, I wonder why she cares about being told off. And I kind of realised that's the sort of thing a child says. I don't want to be told off. I don't like being told off. And I realised that it's just something I came up with when I was younger. I hate being told off. And I've believed it to be true. I've not seen it as thought. And I live out of it all the time. I avoid doing certain things in case I will get told off. And it was just a really cool opportunity to see thought in action. And the other thing I really saw is that the power of thought, mind and consciousness come together to give us an experience as if it is true and real. That's what we're all up against. So you can kind of forgive us for thinking it's true and real, even when it isn't, because it's his job to look true and real. So I suddenly just laughed at my own experience of, but who cares? Sometimes we're going to see it and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we'll be caught and sometimes we won't. And I don't know if it's changed anything in me. I don't know if the next time Rudi has to make a call, which I think might be confrontational, and I have to go in the other room with music on so I can't hear him having a difficult conversation. Maybe that will change and maybe it won't, but it's almost like it doesn't matter. We're not here to be perfect and this isn't about that. It's about noticing and experiencing life from a completely different place. Because we're all going to get lost in thought. It's just the nature of it. That's the power of it. But there's also those times that we already would have had where we've woken up to it, where we've kind of gone to bed mad with someone and then woken up with a different perspective and our hearts opened. It's happening throughout our lives. We're changing our mind, we're having new perspectives. But it's like we don't have to have it all right this moment. It's just the human experience. So whether we're seeing it or whether we're not seeing it, that's still these principles in action through us. It's so unimportant. And I think I thought that by seeing it that way, that I'd maybe become passive or inactive. Well, it doesn't matter. Everything's just happening. Who cares? But I feel like I've been more moved to help and to serve and to try and spread the word of this, but really just to connect with other human beings. Not even share the principles, but to connect. And that was something, again, I really saw on the last, Ken Manning and Robin Charbet did a training in England, and it was very humble and authentic. And it wasn't about giving people these principles or getting these principles out into the world. It was about human beings connecting and waking up and being in love with one another. It wasn't about the principles, but it was the principles. It's what the principles was pointing to. And I realized that the language doesn't even matter. Just being with another human being, knowing the small amount I've seen has changed the way I am with other human beings. Seeing the glimpse of this understanding that I have had has enabled me to listen to the news, and my heart can open, but it doesn't just open for the people who have been killed or their families, it's to everyone involved. Because we're all under the same misunderstanding some of the time. And when I'm in it, it looks true and real. And that's going to be the same for everyone else. So suddenly compassion and humility become just part of your experience because there's nothing else you can feel. because we're all up against the power of mind, consciousness and thought. But to know that it's also this incredible gift, because it's the only experience we have. It's the only experience we can know. Is these three principles coming to life within us, moment to moment to moment. And I think the respect and the gratitude I feel for experience is incredible. I never used to feel grateful for experience. I remember being in hospital and I caught a parasite when I've been travelling, and my mum said, right, let's play the glad game. Because let's think of things to be glad about. Because I had to be in there for a month. It was the first time I'd really had to be on my own away from home for a month. I was like, oh, okay, I'm glad it's on my foot and not my face. But it was like trying to be grateful, trying to be glad. So I tried to go through all these things that I was glad for. But I wasn't really feeling them. I was just coming up with things. And that's what I love about the three principles, is you don't have to try and be grateful, try and be glad. It's almost like that's inbuilt in us as human beings. All of these feelings have been built in us as human beings. But we just get caught up in our thinking sometimes and think it works a way that it doesn't. And then we're not grateful and we are resentful. But then we have the opportunity to wake up and we get to learn and grow from that. So it's almost like I know that for myself, like there were so many feelings that weren't allowed in my experience. I fought them, kept them away. They were wrong and they were bad. But through these principles, I've fully been allowed to feel. We are allowed to feel. It's how we've been built. But I just misunderstood what feeling meant. So in a way, we're just clearing that up. This is what feeling is created from. It's all okay. It's all allowed. And it doesn't seem to make us all run around being awful to each other. It seems to settle us down and enable us to be more loving and caring for people. So it's almost like in my not caring, I've cared more. In me not suffering, my own thinking, my heart's gone out to others suffering, but not in the same way it used to. Like I know even though people suffer, there's still this wealth of potential within them. And that suffering is the same as peace. It's thought in the moment, giving us experience. And without any of them becoming wrong and bad, I feel like you navigate life much more like a child, like you're in and out of different experience, without any of it needing to be so heavy and real and dark. And then you get to really live. Like some of the things that we've done in the last 10 years, it's almost like I have to pinch myself to think we've been able to do that. And so many of them were never possible. Just being at Viva would have been, even if I wasn't a speaker, it would have been uncomfortable for me. Being around people I don't know. And then I do know some people, but then I might not remember what they told me last time, so I probably can't talk to them. Like how much thinking I used to live in. It's like so much of that's fallen away. But then I can still get really shy and insecure sometimes and think I've got nothing to say and everyone hates me. It's just what runs through our minds. It's just what happens. But that's okay too. Like it's not that when I'm seeing it and I'm peaceful and loving, then I'm doing it right and I get a gold star. It isn't that. And that when I'm really feeling terrible and awful that the principles aren't working properly and I'm doing it wrong, we just forget. I don't know why, but it seems that every human being I've ever met sees this and then doesn't. So it's almost like we're all in the same boat. It's just what happens to us. And I think we get to, I remember people always used to say, enjoy the ride, and it's the journey, not the destination. But I can see that their point now, because I don't think there is really anywhere to get to with this. But you get to learn from your own experience. Like you don't have to go away and believe anything anyone has said, but you will learn from your own experience the truth that these principles are pointing us towards. It shows up in everyday life. You see when you've got caught up in thought and just wanted to, you think your partner's out to get you. Like I could think that Rudi's deliberately trying to make my life miserable. And then at some point I'm like, I don't know if that's true. And even if it is, where's my feeling coming from? He deliberately left the lights on to make me mad or leave the window open when we go out. Like sometimes I do go there. But then it's almost, you just start to laugh at your human experience more. Yeah. It isn't so heavy, it isn't so, and I think that comes back to what we saw in Nepal. We're not that important. But at the same time, one person I know can make a huge difference in the world. but one person living from their truth, whether that be that they are going out there and campaigning, or they're being a parent or a teacher or a colleague, one person does make a huge difference. So this is for you and for me, like, it's for us. And I didn't think that there was anything I would be able to offer the world that would be helpful. But I think what Sid has woken us up to is that it's each of us getting in touch with the beauty and the truth within us. That's powerful for the world. Whether we talk to another human being or not, just us seeing it for ourselves is powerful for the world. And that will be, I think, how the world changes, through each individual seeing this for themselves. Because I know I wanted to go away and share this with everyone. And it doesn't always go down very well, just because you've seen something. But luckily for me, like, I didn't have the words for it, so I just got to go away and live what I'd seen. I was just different around people. And I've managed to get my dad interested, Sue was already involved. So my whole family's involved with this now, because it can be contagious. And some people are involved and they don't even know they're involved. They've changed and I don't even know if they've changed, or I just changed how I see them. But it makes for a fuller, gentler life, of more compassion and love, and all of the things I thought I could try and get from life have shown up through not really doing very much, just being around this and learning from my own experience. So it really isn't something to go away and practice or study. There's incredible books and speakers and videos and webinars. There's so much available. But also know that they're just pointing you back within yourself. It's not in the pages of the books or in the words of the movies. It's within you. So if you go away now and you never think of 3 principles again, what 3 principles is pointing to is already within you. And to know that that's there, you could be anywhere and still learn. Because what Sid was pointing us to is that we can learn from within ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of the way that he shared, and the simplicity in the way that he shared. Don't embarrass you too much.
I love knowing the little that I know, because I just had this thought, I really don't think I'm doing a very good job over here. And I was looking around the room at people's faces and thinking, they look really bored. Oh my, he's almost asleep. Oh, she looks confused. And so all this was kind of going on in my head as Jenny was talking.
So really what you're saying is what I was saying.
No, I'll reframe. I was thinking that as I was actually talking, I can do 2 things at once. I'm a man, that's good, isn't it? I was talking and that was going in my head as I was talking. But like, I don't care. It's wonderful, because just because I'm thinking it doesn't mean to say it's true. Thought isn't an instruction to reality. It's a construction of your own mind. Because I remember we did this talk for the National Health Service, and there's this lady there who's holding a folder, looking very upright. She looked really bored for 3 hours. And then we finished. And then at the end, we kind of checked in. I was a little bit worried about what she was going to say. And she slammed the folder down. She said, "Oh my God, this explains everything. This is amazing. We need our managers to have this." And my whole reality I was making up, she's bored, she wants to kill us. So we take in information, but we make up what we make meaning of the information. I just love it. It's like I can...
Are you going to say what the other man said?
Oh yeah. Another man said another meeting.
It's the same meeting.
Was it the same meeting? Oh, it was the same meeting. One man, who I thought was kind of getting it, pointed to me and he said, you've been talking bollocks for 3 hours. And I find it really funny. I should have taken it personally, but I didn't. I just found it really funny. So I used all of my willpower not to laugh out loud. like this, and I'm really sorry for your experience. But then I kind of use it as a teaching point that you thought it was bollocks, you thought it explained everything, you wasn't sure. So it kind of highlights separate realities. That, again, when you're facilitating, it really doesn't matter people's experience, because you can always bring it back to one point. You think it, so you experience it. Doesn't mean to say it's real, but it means it's real for you right now. And I remember one of my original insights that was immeasurably helpful to me, and again reinforced in Nepal. Hands up who's watched our Nepal video blogs? Okay, a few people. I realised I wasn't special. I wasn't better than anybody else. And it's funny because the self-development field is trying to make you feel you're the best. But I kind of had the reverse, where I realised I'm really not that special. I'm not better than anybody else. I'm just the same as everybody else. Like, there's nothing special about me at all. And that was enormously helpful. So if you notice when you talk to people who think they're a bit better than you, they're kind of like this. Oh, so what do you do? But when you're just with another human being, and I love the word human being. Being. Because another thing that really got in my way, and I wanted to do a bit what Jenny said, but visually. So you can hold the microphone and talk and draw. That's quite impressive, isn't it? Don't ask me to juggle that. I used to categorise my experience of life. Bad experience. And good experience. And I could put here things like peace. Or, hate. Feeling down. And here is somewhere neutral. I apologise if you can't see it at the back, but so this is like the bad category of experience, and this is a good category of experience. Now, I used to think that I should be here somewhere. Okay? And if I wasn't there, there was something wrong with me. In fact, if I ever went here, didn't understand the principles, I wasn't getting it, there's something wrong with me, principles don't work, etc., etc., etc. Now, is it possible to have infinity plus 1? No, it's just infinity. Is it possible to have, well, there's God and there's something else apart from God? The totality of experience, the experience of everything, is this. It's all of it. When I use my thought to create a concept about what me being here meant and what me being there meant, guess what happened? Judgment. Hand up who's experienced self-judgment before. Now, I always wanted to be less judgmental of myself and others, but when I saw the one simple fact that I'm experiencing what I'm thinking, it's not a critique of if I've got it or not got it. It's not telling me anything about myself. It's pointing to the neutral fact that we feel what we think, full stop. Just because we think it doesn't mean to say we're that person, it just means that we're having some thoughts in our head. I've had thoughts I want to actually murder some people. so watch out. I have all sorts of crazy thoughts. I mean, whenever I walk along the bridge, because I watch too many superhero movies, I always think, I wonder if I could jump off and land on that rooftop. I'm not going to do it, but that's the thinking that I have. I have enormously judgmental thinking of other people. Absolutely, I'm very judgmental in my head. But the point is, it's just kind of going through. I'm not really taking any of it seriously. All of a sudden, judgment becomes more observation of just the thoughts flowing through your mind. So I wouldn't say I was a judgmental person, it's just that now and again I can have judgmental thinking. I wouldn't say I was a depressed person, I say sometimes I can have thoughts of feeling down. I wouldn't even say I'm an extroverted person, because sometimes I can be incredibly shy. We're not what we think. We are consciousness. Having an experience of our own thinking in the moment. We are and of everything, whether in form or formless. We're not contained to this physical body. We're not contained to this ego personalities of who we think we are. We're just divine consciousness walking around. The power of thought is generating our experience. But we can just let it generate our experience and let it do what it does. So when I saw where my experience came from, all of a sudden, I didn't make a meaning out of any of it. Well, most of the time, I didn't make meaning out of it. And I remember when my father passed away last year, it was just really great to have a cry. It was great to feel down. I didn't have thinking that, oh, I'm not getting principles because I'm feeling down. My mum passed away like 8 years ago. Sometimes I have a day where I feel quite depressed about it. Like, it's not a problem. It's not what you think, it's what you make up about what you're thinking. When you don't really care what's going on in your head, you just let it all flow through, guess what happens? There's no judgment. Because it isn't about what you think, it's about what you think about what you think. You can't control the thoughts popping up into your head. But when you see the nature of them, they can just flow through like clouds in the sky. And it takes us back to our sky-like nature of being. And for me, there's a saying that says, angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. For me, as I see where my experience is coming from, I can't take all the crap in my head that seriously, because it is crap. And you feel lighter. And it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to feel down. None of it means anything. It's just your experience in this moment. And I've got so much benefit from when I'm having a horrible experience, my mum passed away, my dad passed away. But it's not even a horrible experience, it's just experience. Consciousness is expressing sadness. It's not Rudi doesn't get the principles because he's sad. It's consciousness is expressing itself through sadness. Consciousness is expressing itself through peace. You take the me out of the equation, the I out of the equation, and you just got what is. And we go back to God again. Did you want to say anything, or did you want to say a question?
Thank you.
We've got a little bit of time left, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, is that okay? Does anybody want to comment or ask a question or share anything at all?
Just to share. Thank you. It's really just to say thank you feel so moved. It just felt lovely to be in that space with you, and really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to break, but just again, while I've got the stage, I wanted to, Mark and Sheila, those guys, and Sue, like all of them, like Sue's done so much for kids who are defined as badly behaved. There's so much voluntary work, so much pro bono stuff, and Sheila and Mark, I mean, they're always doing something, creating online communities and phone conferences, and all of them are a real testament to what happens when we see through our own thought-created experience to what's making it all happen. So I just wanted to say bless you and thank you for your service to the world. Thank you. Big round of applause.
Thanks again, Rudi. Fantastic. So we'll stop now for a coffee break. So that's 20 minutes. So we'll go to the breakout rooms that you've chosen afterwards at 11:30. And then don't forget, after the breakouts are finished, we're going to come back here just before lunch for Jacqueline's 5-minute video clip. So enjoy your coffee. Thank you.